we do in fact have two separate textbooks for standards 4 and 5. One would be on narrative writing and one would be on report writing, and I'm going to explain why. When the textbooks came out, I initially would have had both the genres in one single textbook, and then COVID would have happened and the Ministry of Education would have made things a bit easier for our students, so they would have indicated the genre that would be tested. So for example, they would have indicated narrative writing would be tested or report writing would be tested. And with this in mind, I felt that it would be much more practical to have one of the genres, so that if they are testing reports, students can focus on that, and if they are testing narratives, they can focus on the narratives. After that, when ministry would have reverted to having both tested, the suggestion came that it should remain separate, because what teachers found was that the physical separation of the textbooks created a mental separation, and it allowed students to recognize in a stronger way that the writing of reports would have been different from the narrative. So we found that the language use, the formal tone and style that report writing would demand, it would have been clearer for students to understand because of that physical separation. It lent some sort of understanding, a deeper understanding for students that this is something that is different from the story writing that they're used to. So that was one of the main reasons the textbooks would have remained separate. Another reason that the textbooks remained separate would have been the heavy content. So those textbooks, they are very much content heavy. So one of them would be around 100 plus pages. The other would be close to 125. So that would be an amalgamation of over 250 something pages for one textbook. So we're thinking of weight, we are thinking of cost. So it was much easier and it was more practical to leave it as it was in the separated texts, so that even in the approach, some schools, when they're using it or parents purchasing on their own, they would purchase the narrative for standard 4, then they may purchase the reports for standard 5. So again, they're working with their children with the genres separated, making sure that they can handle the narrative or the report, whichever they choose to work on first, and then they can move on to the other genre that they would have to work on. So again, we do have two textbooks for standard 4 and 5. Our narrative and report books are separate, and these are some of the reasons based on feedback from teachers and what would have worked better for our children when using these textbooks. So I hope this brings some clarity as to why we have two textbooks for narrative and report. And while I'm on this topic, I would also state that in doing the standard 1 and 2 textbooks, I would have followed suit, where standard 1 and 2, I would have put reports and narratives separately for the same reasons, because our children again make a better distinction with the styles in mind. So our standard 1 and 2 textbooks, they are also separate for the same reason, and they also, very noteworthy is that they cover 2 years. So when you are purchasing these textbooks, they are not for 1 year, they are covering 2 years. So standard 1 and 2, standards 4 and 5. Our standard 3, which is in the middle, we have a mix of the writing styles. However, we have select reports, select narratives for students to work on at the standard 3, because that is a bridging level for the entry into standards 4 and 5.